It is kind of cool though, G, is it connects automatically to Restream. So I like logged into the account and then it started going.
Love it.
Yes, sir. Okay, so some guidelines. If you want to speak, please be on camera. While anybody else is talking, please mute your mic just in case there's any background noise, things of that nature. It makes it better for people to understand what's going on. That being said, welcome to week 5 of Elevare Global Weekly. You know what I'm saying? We got it going. All right. I was sing your pitch. Sing your pitch. So we hear a lot about that. Everybody's always talking about like, hey, what's your elevator pitch? Like if someone asks you what you do, how are you telling them what you do? How are you expressing it, this, that, and the third, right? I make a joke with Glenn that I can always tell when someone's read like a book about pitches and then they've like built it off the book. And we're gonna talk a little bit about that. But the biggest thing I'll say though is that the premise of your pitch is to build instant trust with the people you are talking to in that moment. And the reason why is because if you're pitching them potentially on what you do, they probably don't know you. And they probably don't know what you do. And so the whole point is for you in that, I know people say like 30 to 60 seconds, honestly, 10 to 15 seconds. Like you should be able to like say because what you want to do is open it up for the person you're talking to ask questions. Okay. Today we're going to talk about like understanding, the purpose of the elevator pitch and when to use it. We're going to apply some simple tactics and we're going to go over some things, right? And bearing with us. And so, first thing, the challenge on Monday. So the challenge on Monday was to build the elevator pitch as a whole. And today we're going to sharpen that, right? So the whole point was for you to, the whole point of the weekly challenges is for us to give you something at the beginning of the week that's going to then work itself into Friday, okay? But throughout the week, we obviously wanted is to grow you just a little bit further that week, okay? The first couple weeks, we talked about leadership and mindset because you got to lead yourself if you want to be a better leader for your business. And part of that is also how you think as a person. And so if you don't have the right mindset, it's going to be very hard for you to lead people, let alone lead your business, because you're going to come up against hard times. And if you can't get through them, it's going to be difficult. So we're all about forging people here. So what an elevator pitch is, okay? So 30 to 60 seconds, spoken to Glenn and Chaz about because we are veterans. We're prior military, right? And so with that, and this goes with kind of anybody who's worked in a job for a long amount of time. I would say honestly, probably more than 5 or 10 years, is ultimately your identity starts to converge with whatever that job is, right? So I know as us, a lot of times you'll hear veterans say like, oh, retired Air Force, or retired this, or, retired that, or, oh, I was an investment banker, or I was doing this. Like, you start to blend your identities with what you did. And so, but not all the time do people want to know necessarily what you did or what you're attached to in that instance. A lot of times this is an opportunity to kind of tell people just like a quick tidbit about you depending on the situation, right? Like a moment between me and whoever I'm talking to, right? For Chaz, it might be like I really love talking about mental health and how to be better mentally, right? Glenn likes to talk about, he has a son in college. He has 4 kids total. So that's always a thing. Percy loves content creation. And so judge the situation as you see fit. But when it says like, who are you? I would really think about like, who are you? And how do you express that to somebody that you're talking to? Okay. So I'm going to pause there. No?
Okay, I'll jump in. So I really appreciate that. I like that. A lot of times people think when it's time to do an elevator speech or an elevator pitch, it's all about selling, right? right? Selling the business, selling the service. And I think you hit on a very key point, because as you have always heard me say, people buy you before they buy your service and a product. So using that time, like you said, to make that connection and actually tell them who you are, right? Like I know you're getting ready to sell me something, but who are you
For
that's
sure.
selling me this, right? I think that's kind of a very important aspect to bring to that elevator pitch. And we always say you only have a person's attention for the first 5 to 10 seconds. After that, they start tuning you out and paying attention to the other things that's going on around you. So figuring out what that is that's really going to hit, and the sooner you can find out really how their values align with yours, now you actually can. Kids in my house, and they may have kids in their house. So if I go talking about family, and then they say, "Well, tell me about your family," I'm like, "Oh, it's just me and my wife."
From people. Don't get me wrong. There's other ways to go down the path, and that leads into obviously them understanding the value of what you person. They are more likely to purchase from you, especially like you talk about being a parent. I know as a business owner, a lot of people sometimes, a lot of people have talked about, hey, I'm trying to start a business, but I have kids, I have family, my kids do soccer, my kids do this, my kids do that, right? And so those are things that have to be taken into account. And that's why it's good when you kind of tell people about who you are, because then and you use them in a different forms at different places. So networking wise, that's where I really like kind of the shorter version, which we're gonna go over. Sales calls, that can probably be a little bit of a lengthier version. It just depends. Content intros. We've been messing around with that lately with the content intros, as far as like not necessarily doing it on the front of videos, because people get bored, right? Like most people want to see that stuff kind of at the end after you've already pulled them into the video, which Percy will get into in another lesson. And then casual conversations. I know Glenn and I, when we're out and about and we're doing stuff, generally people are like, oh, like, so what do you guys do? Or like, what is it? What's your business about? Or whatever question someone decides to ask, right? So I'm gonna walk through a few different examples real quick. And you guys tell me which one you would prefer in this setting. And so the first one is, at Forward Learning Group, we help leaders cut through the noise and lead with clarity. Whether you're running a small business or an entire organization, we strengthen your people, processes, and programs so you can grow with confidence. We don't just coach, we build systems that help leaders lead better and organizations scale smarter. Okay, so that's example one. Example two is, Forward Learning Group helps leaders and business owners cut through chaos by strengthening their people, process, and programs so they can lead with clarity and grow with confidence. And the third example is, we help leaders and business owners get clear on their direction and build systems that make their growth feel simple. So those are like your three. So right, so obviously different lengths off top. So I'd like to hear your guys' feedback on those, and then I'll give you a few more examples, and then we'll go through that.
So I like three. It like cuts through all the BS. It's like straight to the point, especially if you're at a mixer and you're trying to move around and everything. It basically tackles everything that that you do, and it's just like, and then you can blend that into a natural conversation, right? I think the other two, they're great. It's just wordy. It'd be good for like probably a video or something like that, or like you said before, like a longer function. You know what I mean? Like something to where you're sitting down.
So I'm gonna say this here. You're talking to that CEO of a company. While number three says all the same thing, but I think number one kind of spells it out a little bit more for him. But then if you talk to a middle level manager, number two might be, is like, okay, give me enough to see where I can effectively make some changes. I kind of understand what you do. This is going to spark me to ask more questions. And while I think three is great, I think three is good because it actually will open up a conversation, because there's a lot of guesswork there. Like, oh wow, how do you do that? How do you do this? So you give them, the basics and sparks the conversation. Where that CEO probably doesn't have the time to have that conversation, so you give it to them. You give it to them all in one, in a 10-second wrap up. So I like all three. Preferably, number three would be the one that I'd be most comfortable with, but I could see definitely a benefit for all three.
Being at one of the Chamber of Commerce mixers, I would use the number three just because everything is so fast paced, right? And folks are there to really benefit them, not so much to actually hear your story. And so, yeah, I would for sure use 1 and 3, depending on the environment.
Bet. And that's dude, that's not a one answer thing, and I'm like, okay, you're right. And so the second example I have for you guys is Elevare Global is a community for creators and business owners who want to grow faster together. We combine coaching, media support, and automation tools inside one connected ecosystem. It's where leadership meets content and systems, helping you build momentum, staying accountable, and scaling without feeling alone. So our second is Elevare Global connects creators and owners in a powerful community that blends leadership, media, and automation, helping you grow faster together. And the third one is Elevare is a community where creators and business owners grow together. We mix leadership, media, and automation so you're never building alone. Thoughts?
And or depending on if you're having, like, let's say I'm having dinner with Callie, right, for the first time, talking about Elevare and the community itself. I feel like the first one is more geared towards that conversation.
Agree with Glenn. I think the reason why we have the elevator pitches is to open up for a conversation, right? So if we just open up the fire hose and just let him have it, you know what I mean, with all this information, like, he no longer has questions, conversation's over, right? But if you give them the nice little clip notes of, like, pieces of what you do, that actually opens up, and the woman or man is like, oh, can you elaborate on this? And then that's where you can get into that conversation and get into the weeds or whatever.
And so one of the things I'd like to highlight and is that ultimately we want clarity and not cleverness. Whoop. And the reason I say that is because I think a lot of times people want to get like clever with what they do, right? Like they want to, I mean, that's just my opinion, you don't have to agree, but they want to be kind of like cutesy with it. And I think it doesn't always hit potentially their target audience that they're trying to talk to, right? And so you have to be careful when you're trying to explain what you do and trying to be clever, because a lot of times people honestly might not ask a question. Like if the beginning of your elevator pitch isn't interesting enough, I would say, you're going to get to that second part that's maybe clever, and they're just going to let it fall out of the wayside. They'll be like, oh, okay, cool, sounds good. They're not even going to be like, oh, that's clever, what does that mean? That's not generally, in my experience, what's going to happen per se. And so you want to be as clear as possible on what you do, how you do it, and how it helps them, while keeping, in my opinion, somewhat broad enough to where they want to ask a question. And then they ask for a little bit more clarification on what exactly it is that you do. So, some kind of common mistakes. Too long. Like what we talked about kind of out the gate is that many times when you are trying to do this elevator pitch, also, in my opinion, overly practiced elevator pitches. I know this is something that Glenn and I have discussed and let me know if you guys have run into this, but when you meet somebody and they like ramble off their elevator pitch, and at that point, it almost feels disingenuous. And I think this kind of goes back to Chaz's point, where it's like people want to deal with people. And so I think that's where like really honing in on communication as a skill also becomes paramount, because you can say the same elevator pitch 10 different times and it's going to hit somebody.
So I think it goes back to being natural. You know what I mean? Just being natural. I get the over rehearse, but I do think that you should put it into your muscle memory so it does sound natural. Prime example, like when I do a video, like when I first started doing videos, like for myself, like I would always rehearse like the key points of like what I said, like you know, um, my introduction and everything else, so it sounded natural. I get when people sound robotic and they're just like, I am so and so and I do X, Y, and Z. It doesn't sound, but you want to kind of open it up for conversation. It's a conversational piece. That's how we should look at it, as it's a conversational piece, meeting people, making people feel comfortable, opening it up for questions naturally. That's why I always say, like, give them just a little bit so they can ask more questions to lead into whatever you want them to ask next. You know what I mean? So you're ready for that next one. So I mean, a lot of people get nervous too when they get into um, big groups of people and talking about what they do. So confidence plays a big part in that elevator pitch as well. If you don't have confidence and you're just like, "Hi, I'm Percy, and I'm the creative director for L3 Media." It just doesn't sound right. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not confident in that, they're not going to be confident in you providing them services. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll mute.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Cam and Glenn, I know you guys can relate to this because you're fellow chamber members. And remember back when you first started going to the chamber and people didn't know who you were, and you didn't know who they. But every time you encountered, they literally told you the same exact thing. Like their elevator pitch was the first thing that they said to you. It's like, bro, you told me that last week. You told me that 3 weeks ago, right? And that comes from that over rehearsing and you're right, it is completely disingenuous. When I hear somebody start going down that road that's telling me the same thing, I walk away. I literally walk away because I don't want to hear that again. Like, I want to have a conversation with you. Like, we're here to grow and we're supposed to be trying to grow each other. I don't want to just pour into you. Like, stop trying to sell me here. Right? I don't know. That's just kind of my take on that over rehearsing of an elevator pitch.
Well, I feel like it also makes you feel like you said, if you're like meeting someone for multiple times and that's how they lead, it almost feels like they don't necessarily want to be there. They're just trying to get through that moment. Like, yeah, Jeff, I've heard your elevator speech every time because you're like, you use it as your last name. Anybody else? Callie, I'd be interested to know your experiences when it comes to kind of elevator speech.
Your music, Cam.
Oh. My bad. I said, Callie, I'd be interested to know your views on elevator pitches. Being as, like you do marketing and you help people really craft kind of like websites that will pull people in.
Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I don't know, my connection is being terrible, so it's just cutting in and out, and so that's why I kind of sat back and been quiet. As far as elevator pitches go, I saw that task come through on the thing, and I've just been soaking it all in because I've really been trying to define or get back to the basics of what I stand for, and so every day it's like processing through my brain of like what would my elevator pitch be, and then I keep changing it. So I'm all over the place right now, but I've agreed with everything you guys have said about keeping it short to the point, and then also you have to change it based on who you meet, who you're connecting with. And so yeah, I'm just soaking it all in, listening to you guys. Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's good to know that it will evolve over time. no companies kept, I think, I mean, granted, you got like Nike, right? Just do it. That's been their slogan per se, but if you actually ask them like what they do, I'm sure that's evolved over time, right? As with any company, as they add services, remove services, as the market changes, as the landscape changes, things will adjust as necessary. Ultimately, I always tell people it's what do you do and why does it affect the people in front of you, right? So like if I'm on the spot and people are like, oh, so like what does L3 Media do? I'm like, we tell stories that make you money. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but I do think sometimes it's good. Like I was telling Percy this week, right, is just because we have this community and we are trying to help spur growth does not mean we are not growing every day ourselves. And so like I've been doing a lot more back to the basics when it comes to, you know, the sales process and walking a customer down the road, right? And I was telling Percy, I said, none of this stuff that I'm necessarily learning is brand new. But it's a back to the basics because we get so caught up on this day to day that we forget, honestly, sometimes what made us successful up to this point, like Air Force recruiting. I hated when I had to write everything down on my calendar and like have good time management. But guess what? It's like what makes me successful today. I hated when they were like, all right, you're going to, greet the prospect. Then you're going to ask 3 probing questions and then, based off their objections. And I was like, oh, this is so stupid. Nobody talks like this. But realistically, it was a mainframe and it was something to use basic, right? And inadvertently, what you'll find is you're doing those things in a proper communicative sale with somebody. It's not, you're just like, hey, I'm going to ask you 3 probing questions now. And then, I have an objection answer for you now. Like, you're not doing that. And I think sometimes as business owners, we can get wrapped up in that and just forget, like, well, what's the basics of the situation? And so that's really kind of what the elevator pitch was supposed to help you guys get back to, is back to the basics of what it is you do and why does it matter. I feel like Chaz is itching to click the button. I've seen his hand go in his mouse a couple times.
No, absolutely. I did have something that because you bring up a very valid point, and I do appreciate this weekly challenge because I'll tell you, because I was so focused on kind of putting together this elevator pitch, like this week I've been very productive because of this, and like things like my SWOT analysis I've reevaluated, like all those things that my strategic plan. I got my strategic plan for 26 already done, all because I started thinking about like, okay, who I was 12 months ago is not who I am now.
Yeah.
Personally and as a business, right? So I have to get an update on my mission and vision. Like that's all those things are meant to be living documents. And I think when we craft an elevator pitch on a regular basis, I think that's a great way to remind us to actually go back and look at that framework as you were talking about. And like, okay, how have we adjusted and making sure that we're up to date, right? Heaven forbid something happened and Cam gets sick and he's in the hospital. Glenn's got to do everything himself. But we never updated any of our procedures. We never updated our mission, our vision, right? So how do we keep going, right? So it really did force me to actually think about some of those things that, like you said, when we get busy and we start moving forward, we kind of just like forget about those. So absolutely.
That's my bad.
It's in school.
Well, would you share it with the group, please?
Yeah, let me. Oh, you want me to say it right now?
Yeah.
So my elevator pitch is I help leaders, teams, and organizations reshape the way they think, lead, and live so that it can create a lasting impact for inside out. Through frame shaping, I guide people to align mindset, values, and action, turning clarity into confidence and potential into performance. Now, it sounds very, very like robotic, like as I say that, but I'm going to tell you, everything that I put in there really does hold value, right? So my opening, I start with I help.
Yeah.
Right? Like I am trying to build that connection. I'm not going into, hey, here are my credentials, here's this, that, and the other. It's like, I help. Oh, you gonna help me? Like the intent is for whoever I'm pitching it to, so, oh, you're gonna help me, right? And then I followed up with leaders, teams, and organizations reshape the way they think, lead, and live, right? And that is who I am because you guys know that I really do take mental health,
Oh,
mental wellness very seriously. So
yeah.
you think about that. I help adding things like will and yet. How to think positive, how to be positive, how to embrace those challenges that are there, right? Then how they lead, right? You guys have heard me say it all the time. You can't be an effective leader in an organization if you can't be an effective leader in your own life.
Yep.
Right? So I'm letting them know right up front, hey, I'm a human and here's where my focus is. Now, at that point, they're either gonna want to know more or they're not going to want to know anything. And you're going to be able to see that through their body language and everything. And that's when I then, hey, through frame shaping. Now I've introduced frame shaping to them.
Yeah.
So the first part of that is literally like, hey, here's who I am and what I do. You know, without telling them who I am and what I do.
Yeah.
And then I introduce the second half is introducing frame shaping.
Yeah.
I don't know, y'all's thoughts on that?
I'm gonna save mine till the end. I'd be interested to know what you guys think.
I'm gonna be short and sweet. I like how Chaz just wants to get straight to the point, and it goes back to like what we were saying before, like when we are presenting, what I mean, we want to make sure it's short to the point, what I mean, and it's not too much pizzazz like into the initial meeting, what I mean. You don't want to just open up your cards and be like, here I am, here's my credentials, I do X, Y, and Z. No one cares about that. Like, we want to be natural, friendly, and we want it to be, something that people can digest. You don't want to give them too much where they're just like, whoa, hold on, this is the first date, buddy. You know what I mean? So, those are my points to what he said.
Hey Chaz, there was something that you said that, and I'll kind of shift, maybe give this feedback on another side of the coin. Like I feel like based off of what you said and the little that I know about you, and having that very brief conversation, I think we get so caught up in always trying to like sell to everyone that if the conversation stops there, they're not even your targeted audience. And so, I'll leave it at that. I like it.
So I like it, and I like it for two reasons. One, you have like a longer pitch that starts off with a shorter one that you can use. So like the beginning of it says, I help leaders, teams, and organizations reshape the way they think, lead, and live so they can create lasting impact from the inside out. Like you could stop right there, and that's like that's like for it. So I like those a lot. I like both of those a lot. I know you put the Elevare one in here as well, and I feel like you did kind of the same thing, right? But yeah, so I mean, that being said, I mean the whole point of this exercise is really just to like get everyone aligned with what it is that's going to help them express to people what they do. Many times business owners and entrepreneurs, they don't remember that the number of sales is directly equated to how many times you try and sell. So it's a numbers game at the end of the day. Once again, another thing that the Air Force taught me that I hated in the moment, but I completely understand now, is that at the end of the day, it is a numbers game. If you talk to 100 people, you can expect that you might be able to get 10 customers out of that. And that's a pretty, a lot of people are like, oh, 10, that's it? It's actually not a bad number. 10 to 30% is like you're killing it. Realistically, though, most businesses are rocking anywhere from 5 to 8. That doesn't mean that everybody you talk to is going to buy your service, but it does mean that you can potentially get more people in front of you who are willing to buy your service based off pre-qualifying stuff, which, like I said, we'll cover that in a whole different lesson. But, you know, the biggest things about the elevator pitch is don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. And like Callie kind of talked about, is like it's gonna evolve. This thing is, your business is a living, breathing organism. You know, it is not something that has to be completely structured the whole time, right? You know, I know we hear a lot about business plans, and those are a helpful tool that force you to sit down and think. You know, it's the same thing with like college degrees, right? A lot of times, people don't understand that a college degree isn't necessarily looked at from a perspective of knowledge. It's looked at a perspective of you were able to commit to something for an extended amount of time and finish it. That's why it carries weight. People think it's because of knowledge. It's in certain areas, right? Like doctors and stuff like that. But a lot of times businesses want that strictly because they want to see if you finish something that took a long time. Because a lot of people won't. And so, that being said, that's what I got this week. Crafting the elevator pitch. So, I'll let the rest of my fellow founders speak. And then we'll wrap up this Friday to get started for a good weekend.
I have something that I will close out my portion of it and say this. And so, November 1st, Saturday, November 1st, in Fairfield, California, this community will be doing our Elevator Global Launch Mixer in Fairfield, California. I know we have folks coming out from Florida already, from Utah. Callie, I don't know where you at, but you're welcome to come. We would love to see you. It'll be Saturday, November the 1st from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. I'm looking forward to it. Super excited. You will see the flyer drop this weekend.
Okay, so I just had a quick question for you guys. So going through all these elevator pitches and everything like that, everybody says I. I've been so focused on growing myself as a team that I've been trying to transition from I to we. And I understand
I, because Chaz is an I. Chaz, you know, whereas Percy and Glenn will tell you when we are in the office, it is a we. And that's because we have a team, right? It's like me, it's Percy, it's Glenn, it's our VAs and things of that nature. And so you have people that work with you. So I think you saying we is very appropriate to what you do, because like when Chaz says, if Chaz was to say we, people might assume that someone else might show up and give a presentation when that's not the case. It's always going to be, at least at the current, it might be him only in a meeting, or it might be, hey, I'm going to set you up a meeting with my business partner because whatever. And so I think it's all about how you're structured. And I think because then the person will pick up on like, what does that mean per se? I will also say, in my personal experience, because of what we do, we works a little better because in our particular area, we're taking a little bit more serious rather than saying I. In my personal opinion, I don't believe that enough people respect solopreneurs. And that is why a lot of people, when they are out on their own, it's very hard for them to keep prices and things of that nature, because people assume if you're buying.
Right. And it evolved to, like you said, our language is we, right? We either say we, or we talk about, or we say the company. And so, it's funny because just that comes we consistently. It doesn't matter who's elevator or who's speaking on the elevator pitch about the company. And so, but you bring up a really good point. And so, substituted with the name of the company and or we. So, but really good question. Really, really good question.
So I'm gonna jump in here, and Callie, absolutely using the term "we" is great. So I'm telling you guys, I get surgical with this stuff. So when you look at my elevator pitch, like Cam said, it is split into two, and I do. So notice I always, like in the second half, I said through frame shaping, right? It's all about positioning. I'm positioning myself in frame shaping. So when I go out there, I'm always thinking growth opportunity, right? What I don't want to do is I don't want people to think that frame shaping is going to stay I forever, right? And so when I'm actually talking, it's the same thing with Elevare. If you can see my pitch in the community for Elevare, I let it be known up front that it's not an I by saying, as a founding member of Elevare Global, right? So letting people know what I do. Like, hey, you want to know what Cam does? Go ask Cam. Right? Because I'm not alone. So I'm very strategic at the wording that I use. So the words that I use, is all about my positioning, because that's why I'm having this conversation. Because if whenever I go out and I talk about Elevare, because I talk about it a lot, absolutely, it's always we. I always make it a known fact that, and that's a selling point, right? It is a selling point when I go out there and say I have partnered with, and even though that they're all in one, I always say I have partnered with 2 other companies in California, right? So now, literally, that's brand recognition, right? We talk about that. That's like here. Oh well, wow, frame shaping, and specifically.
As far as quick marketing goes, I was like the solopreneur for. I've always just felt like that, right? Yeah, I have some people who help me, but they're not the face of it. I'm been the face of it since the day I opened, and I'm trying to transition out of being the sole face of it, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at. Is I always want to say we. I always want people to think I'm bigger than I am, right? Essentially, to get those deals, but at the same time, like if I'm in an elevator with somebody and I'm introducing myself, do I say I or we? So anyway, thanks for your input.
So I think in that specific scenario, right? Like it's like I always say, like I'm the CEO of Forward Learning Group, and what we do, like you kind of, this is who I am associated with the company, kind of like Chaz was saying, this is who I am associated with the company, but this is what we do as an organization. And I think that
don't really think about as business. It's something so small that we don't really think about, like the elevator pitch. You know what I mean? Like, I think it was a great lesson. It was something that we can all digest and like really think about. The next function that we go to, we are God, I can't think. My brain's been fried all week. But we are intentional in what it is that we're doing. I mean, I think with a lot of lessons that we do, like I know for me, I'm being more intentional as far as like how I navigate through this world.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So like Elevare has been, this is just my opinion. I'm not trying to like boost anyone up or anything, but Elevare has been like a great community, for people that are trying to get into business, trying to get into leadership, trying to become a better marketer. You know what I mean? Like this is like a place where, it's a positive, non-toxic area where like on school. So if you guys want to check out the video of the full video of me going through the AI and turning it into a gorgeous piece, you're more welcome. It's 22 minutes, you know what I mean? And you'll get a good laugh because, Cam was right next to me trying to make me laugh through the whole process. So
You can't take me anywhere. That's a good point. For those of you watching, Percy, we have dove very hard into AI this past week, and how not just like to write a prompt, but how to take AI plus real life skills plus editing in actual applications and like blend all that into like really dope content. But the only place to see the video of Percy going through the training on that is in Elevare Global. So I would suggest you join if you want to learn those things. And you can find it in the branding and marketing.
yes, sir. Okay. Oh, we ready. We ready.
I told you I was going. I told you like, immediately following. If you had time, we can go through the settings. I have everything right here. This. Oh, Cam, I know y'all probably help me out with this. Percy and I was gonna go through the settings on the camera. He's gonna kind of teach me how to get the quality of the